I am your host, Nicole Will, and we're so happy you're here as we navigate the world with your aging loved one. We are here to come alongside older adults, family members, and the senior living community as we explore the world of aging and elder care with helpful resources, informative interviews, and approachable conversation. We get to do this together, so join us on our journey, and this is the Will Gather podcast. What started as a young couple at 23 years of age, purchasing their first assisted living community and then living with those older adults as they worked and renovated it for the next 3 years, led to the mission to positively impact over 10 million older adults. Kris Chana is the founder and CEO of ActivAge Adult Day Clubs. He's on a personal mission to give seniors hope and a sense of purpose that helps them live their best lives while supporting those families that care and love for them. Kris has spent his time immersed in the day-to-day, and it really taught him what families go through and having appreciation for them and creating environments that people really want to be a part of. This conversation for me was a masterclass in leading with heart, the excitement that Kris brings into the space, his provision for adult day programs, the collaborative partnerships that he's able to foster, the opportunity for bringing change in a much needed space, and educating us on bringing this concept into our mainstream conversation. We're going to talk about the history of long-term care, how we've evolved throughout the years, and how healthcare has improved. People are living longer, what care looks like now. The next 20-year revolution will be the era of adult daycare, and Kris is the leader to bring us into this new era of care. The pressure that we have to find affordable alternative options, the increasing number of family caregivers needing that support and respite care, why this is the beginning of a massive expansion, and what happens when people are really engaged in purposeful adult day programs, what services are offered, and Kris's global vision for the future. If you want to be encouraged in the landscape of older adult care, in business and leadership, and just being a good human, don't miss this conversation today with Kris Chana. Hi, Kris. I've been counting down the days to have this interview. We had chatted before, and I was really looking forward to this conversation, the leadership that you bring into this space, and think of you as this incredible educator in this new way of how we're going to be aging in the future. So thank you. Welcome. I'm
Wow.
so glad you're here.
I appreciate that. No, thank you, Nicole.
Yeah.
It means a lot.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the future for sure. And yeah, so no, but I appreciate everything you're doing. I mean, helping spread the word and doing it first class, you do a great job. So super excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. That means a lot. We have to encourage each other, right? When we're
Yeah.
when we're in this together.
The senior care world, it's a small little world, but there's a lot of people that are going to be in need. So it's it's kind of cool to be a part of this smaller, more forward thinking group of people,
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that just I gravitated towards you was your energy in the space, your excitement. You're bringing kind of that new lens. And I know that you come by it honestly because you have quite the history of being able to interact with those older adults and how you got started. So first, I would love for you to share with us a little bit about your background and what brought you here.
Sure, absolutely. I never went to school thinking oh, let me get into senior care. I went to school for finance, and the whole idea after graduating college was my buddy and I were going to open up an all-state insurance agency and kind of sell financial services as part of what we did. I hated it. Within a few days, I was I went through all that schooling, got a job, moved to Texas, and a week later, I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, this is not for me.
This is not for me. I'm like, oh my God, I made a mistake. How do I go? How do I take it all back? I convinced my friend to come out here. We did all this stuff. Anyways, but I think what I realized is selling an intangible product, like a insurance or financial services. You're selling something to somebody that you hope. Well, I guess in financial services, you hope that it appreciates and does what it's supposed to do, and it helps them retire. But at least with insurance, like, you're hoping they never have to use it, and then you're trying to sell them something they got to pay for when they hope that you never have to use it anyways.
Yeah.
So it's just like this thing that I don't know. For me, I just couldn't find joy in doing
Mm-hmm.
that, and
Mm-hmm.
so I realized early on, like I needed to find something else. I just didn't know what that was. Well, I had ran into a family friend of mine, and he had was going through that whole housing crisis. He had just like basically like lost his mortgage company, and but he took back this home and turned it into an assisted living facility. And he was telling me about it. He's like, "Why don't you come check it out? See what you think. See if this is something that like interests you at all." And I'm like, "All right, what do I have to lose at this point?" So I go over to like his house for the day, and I have no idea what I'm walking into. In my head, I'm thinking like it's like going to be some like nursing home, hospital like environment, people stuck in the room, like kind of bedbound. But I didn't even know what the word bedbound meant. I just, in my head, I'm thinking it's gonna be one of those things. But I pull up and it's a residential home, and I walk in, and like he had like 6 residents, and they were all just kind of living in this really home-like environment. And I was like, man, that's kind of cool. And I spent the time, with his residents that day, and you know what I learned is that they enjoyed just having someone around. They
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed having someone to talk to and play cards with, and then I left there feeling that day like, wow, like I really made an impact in his residents' lives. And I remember thinking like, man, I could totally see myself doing this. Like I never had ever thought we could, I would do something like this, but I left there knowing I felt fulfilled, and I know they had a really good day. And so it was just one of those things where I could totally see myself doing this into the future. And
Mm-hmm.
as I looked into the industry a little bit more, at the time in 2011, there wasn't a lot of this like new age assisted living. It was you were still kind of like facing like a lot of these older places with old wood furniture and rose petals on the walls and just like an older style.
Right.
So we were looking and we found a place in Port Charlotte that was for sale, and it was a 6,000 square foot, 12 bedroom, 8 bathroom home that had formerly been an assisted living facility. And we ended up taking this place over. And so at the age of 23, and then at the time my fiance was 21, we ended up purchasing this abandoned building essentially. And the guy that was trying to sell it, he wasn't he was having difficulty selling it. It was a very distressed piece of property. Like, it was almost like you couldn't give it away, but like
Mm-hmm.
he was willing to take a bet on me. And, but that allowed us to actually start in the senior care space. And I mean, we moved into it. We lived there for the first 3.5 years. I mean, we did everything. I mean, I basically would market Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. I hired someone to just kind of like cover those hours.
Yeah.
But then I would, the rest of the time, I was taking care of our residents. I mean, we fixed the place up, we renovated it the best we could, we got it licensed, and then I was the primary caregiver, and I was the caregiver on the weekends, and I did all the cooking and the, cleaning, and I helped our residents with showers and helped them with all their toileting needs. But it was like a crash course, like in the like the home health aide or CNA space. I'd never been to schooling for that. I'd never taken care of anyone
Yeah. You
in
had
this
like
capacity.
school of life, right?
Yeah, like it was like, I've never changed a diaper my entire life, and here I am, like this is my job now, and
Yeah.
like it was just one of those things that like I think looking back, those some of those skills came natural to me,
Mm-hmm.
and even my ability to understand and to connect with seniors that have dementia or Alzheimer's, I just connected with them naturally. So I hate to even say that like I learned this skill set. It was just for some reason I
Mm-hmm.
could just see past the fact that someone with dementia was acting a certain way or was upset about something, and even if it didn't make any sense, I just had a natural ability to just like not let that affect me and not get
Mm-hmm.
upset or frustrated, and just be able to like connect with them and make them laugh or distract them. And so really I think I found my love for senior care like in that environment,
Mm-hmm.
not even knowing that that would become something that like I would become extremely passionate about.
It's like you were meant to be there, right?
Yeah,
Meant to
100%. Yeah. Well, and I
meant
think I
to
think that's like
find
part of
you.
like, God's like taking you on this journey, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
go to school for finance, I get out, I'm like, oh, that's not for me. So
Mm-hmm.
like I go over here, and this like family friend of ours, like he started an assisted living facility, like no idea what I'm getting myself into. Oh, let me try this. Like, it's like all these little steps, it's like someone's leading that way,
Yeah.
and kind of helping like make those decisions, or at least hey,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like this, I do like this, this is cool, and here I am in this environment now where I feel like I would have never picked this for myself, but man, like I really enjoy it, and I feel
So
like I'm making a big
glad.
difference.
Yeah. I'm so glad you're here. And my favorite saying, and I think of this often, is that what is meant for us will not miss us. I think we stress so much about needing to try to find the right thing, but knowing that if we just take that one step forward, that it will come together, and we just have to trust that. And when we do those really big things too, I think it's almost like a blessing that we don't really know how
Yeah.
maybe challenging that journey will be. Because
Well,
if we
100%.
could see the future, we might not step into it.
No, and that's and because I don't think I ever thought I was going to live there for 3.5 years. I'm pretty certain that when we started that, felt like, all right, we'll be here for 6 months and, hire overnight, but it just took way longer, and there was just, I had a lot of things to overcome as a 23-year-old, especially in the town that I was in, and then I think also the industry that we were in. It's like
Yeah.
23-year-old in this kind of old school town starting an assisted living facility. It was just like, who is this guy? Like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. You got
do
to
we trust him
break
yet?
through. Exactly.
I had to really start earning people's trust, and and then eventually, once they realize, okay, he's doing this for the right reasons, they run a really good place, like they have a great reputation, then it was like, I felt like it was a lot easier,
Yeah.
and the respect was there. But, in the beginning, I think there was a lot for us to have to prove to the public. One, could we operate a business? Two, could we take care of people? Three, could we service the family members the way that they needed to be taken care of? And, there was just a lot of stuff that I had to learn as an individual and grow up and just become. And I felt like going back, I would not change it for the world. I can't imagine if I knew all that I was going to go into, that like you said, it would scare the heck out of you. But looking back, it's also the thing that keeps me humbled.
Yeah.
And reminds me, of where we came from, but also what family caregivers are going through. Because I feel like living in that environment and actually having to be a business owner and then also a caregiver and then living in all of that, I felt like gave me perspective on the pressure or the burden that family caregivers face. And I feel like I experienced that at a level that most people probably don't really understand until they go through it.
100%. There's that perspective that only living in those situations can give us, where we've lived through it, so we can actually really relate. And I think that that's when too that empathy comes in, when we know okay, I have compassion for the situation, which is only makes you that better leader and that better CEO for the company that you have, because you have the experience to back up the reason behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Right. It definitely helps me kind of relate to the families, but as well as our team. And, it's so, I think all in all, it was certainly a great experience. And then, that's where it all started. I mean, that's where I think after 4 years of being in that environment and, being very hands-on when it comes to care, I think for me, it was you know what? I think this is my calling. I think I'm meant to do something big in the senior care space. And, I feel like I was put here for a reason. It's I need to take these other gifts and skill sets that I have and really pour into senior care, as much as I possibly can, using those gifts that I have,
Yeah, yeah. So you went from living in that environment to then what transpired to bring you to wanting to open and start ActivAge with adult day programs? And I know you've got the home care side of your business as well. How did that play out for you?
Yeah, so I'll try to sum up the kind of the last 5 years, but we in 1 week after having our assisted living facility for 5 years, there was just 1 week where I got 3 phone calls back to back for families looking for just help during the day. And so I never really had even thought of or even looked into adult daycare until those 3 families that week called about it. I was like, this is so, by the third call, I'm like, this is so weird.
This is interesting. Yeah.
This never happened before. And all of a sudden, three people in 1 week are asking about and in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I don't want to make our assisted living facility be this daytime care environment, because I don't want our residents to feel like we're renting out their home. This is their home. I don't want, all right, guys, hey, we got Bob coming in today. He's going to come hang out with us for the day. You cool with that? No, we don't know Bob. Bob's not part of the club.
Who's Bob? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, just that idea was all right. So I didn't like that. But I went and searched adult daycare centers to kind of see what they were all about. And then I realized, this is I actually like this idea, And so we we pressed into it and we found a building like that was maybe about a few miles down the street, about 5 minutes away. And at the time, like, we tried expanding in the assisted living facility. Just I didn't have any luck on the offers I had made on other places, but we were trying to figure out how do we grow. And so we decided at that moment to grow into adult daycare. And then in 2019, we opened up a home care agency to kind of provide this complementary like service. So now we could take care of them during the day in the adult day environment. They have home care. We could provide care into their home, and then eventually, if they need assisted living, they had that too. As we opened the adult daycare, though, about a year into it, I started to realize like the impact that we're having in this environment is 10 times greater than what we were doing in assisted living or even home care. And it was like, and it was in like all these different ways. Like one, the sense of community and socialization and just the sense of purpose and meaning that now this senior has because they have this kind of like social network of people that are all kind of going through this similar stage in life. And outside of that like sphere that we were able to provide in our daycare, like they don't have anyone in their world, like, because for the most part, everyone that they've ever known is like either passed away or is just in a different stage in their life that they're not able to connect anymore. And then for the families, like we were giving this like break, but then the families were getting a break. They were able to just sit in their own home and read a book if they wanted to, or go to the beach or like run errands. And like, it wasn't like they had to like, wait for Susie to show up from the home care agency and, oh, she didn't show up today. And, now I can't do this thing today. It was just like the fact that it provided this, service for families. And then at the same time, it was like half the cost of home care and like other alternatives, like assisted living. It was just like, man, I mean, this is like a win, like a triple win for everyone involved. I was doing studies and there's like only 28,000, or there's 28,000 assisted living facilities. There's 35,000 home care agencies. There's 15,000 skilled nursing facilities, but there's only 3,500 adult day centers. And I'm like, this needs to be everywhere. Like this needs to be like across the entire country at scale. And, like just like some of these assisted living facilities and home care agencies are. And so that was really like kind of when we decided to like double down on the adult day effort. How do we scale and expand? And the method of franchising came up. So we went ahead and in order to do that, we actually changed the name of the company from Chelsea Place to ActivAge. And Chelsea Place was actually named after my wife, Chelsea. So, but
Oh, I love that. I love the backstory.
yeah,
I think too, when you look at you're seeing that there's such a big need, I just out of curiosity Googled day programs by my home. And I'm in Minnesota, and the state of Minnesota, in the metro area, I could really only find just like a handful, right?
yeah.
So there's such an incredible need, and we'll kind of get into all those details of why and how and what that meets the need for people, and wanting to educate people out there that this is such an incredible option, because I think we automatically go towards, okay, home care or senior community.
Right.
But we don't necessarily think through all of the other really viable options that are going to meet the needs of our family, right?
Yep.
And most of us are in that middle class. And so, we'll talk about like all of that. But I think too, looking at history, which I love, like seeing why are we in this place that we're in, it's important to understand where we've been, where we've come from. And so the history of long-term care model and how that all happened, I would love your perspective and to share with us a little bit more about the history of long-term care and when it started to gain traction, how we shifted then to assisted living and all of that, because I think it's important to see how we've evolved and grown as a society and providing care for those older adults.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting looking at that because like you think about most of the skilled nursing facilities around the country, and most SNFs or nursing homes or whatever people are familiar with when it comes to that terminology. Most of those are all they all have like 7-foot ceilings. Like they're like you walk in and you feel like okay, it's like okay, if you were really tall you couldn't walk through the hallways, but they're like they're all like built in the 1950s and 60s. And for the most part, that expansion of nursing home was our first kind of long-term care model, because prior to that, it was like, all right, your family took care of you, or just our average like age, just, we didn't live that long, so we didn't really have this need for a place to be and to have care. But as people started to live longer and as people needed a place, for them to be taken care of, because now like you had a lot more like people working. And then, as Social Security rolled out, actually, it was Social Security that, rolled out to take care of those that were like, at the age of 65 plus, you saw this massive kind of expansion of this like nursing home environment from like the 50s to the 60s and even into the 70s. Like that was some of like the largest growth of your traditional nursing homes. And then as that time had gone on and medicine had gotten better and people were living even longer, it's like, now Mrs. Smith she don't want to go to the nursing home. Like she wants something a little bit nicer than that,
Yeah.
And so now
What
like,
are my options?
yeah, exactly. So like now you start seeing like in the 70s, 80s and 90s, like this new boom of like assisted living kind of being another alternative where it's like trying to catch someone at a little bit earlier stage, and hopefully like they're a little bit more independent and they're less kind of like bedbound or they have less medical needs, but because we're taking care of people longer, it's like now these folks are, maybe just have some sort of physical disability or some cognitive function, forgetfulness that they just need some support around them. So you see that growth in assisted living. And then also as people start to age, you see more and more people that are like, hey, you know what? I don't want to go to a place. I want to stay at home. And this was at the same time where like you have technology coming into play, where all of a sudden now home care starts to become this like, alternative solution as well. Because I now can send people in the home. I don't have to leave and go into assisted living. And then like that continues to expand kind of like to the 2000s. And then between technology and franchising, that made that whole industry blow up. But then, here we sit in this weird conundrum of services, where, we're in 2020 now. We just had record high inflation. Cost of living is going through the roof. In 1980, you were at a point in time where multi-generational housing was at the lowest percent. It was 12%.
Yeah.
And so that was a time where everyone had fled and left their parents and went on their own and pursued the American dream and bought their house, which is also what led to that boom of assisted living and stuff, because when people were now retiring, like their family wasn't around to take care of them. So it was like, all right, mom's going to assisted living. But now we're entering this weird time where in 2020, like just recently, our multi-generational housing stats we're closer to 22%. And like last year alone, 15% of all home sales were multi-generational households. So we're entering a new era where almost because of cost alone, it's forcing families to have to rethink the home. And how do we like sustainably continue to live, maintain a lifestyle, and afford these services that we need, whether it's for our mom, our dad, whether it's for like even the way we're looking at how we're gonna spend our own money, and we're like, man, shoot, like mom's starting to need help, but like she doesn't have a lot of money, and it's like, man, she could run out of all of her funds in 2 years by just going into assisted living. All right, so let's bring mom in, have her live with us. We'll keep an eye on her, and she'll be able to like watch the kids while we're working or whatever the case might be. But we're seeing that happen more and more frequently, and I just think this kind of next generation and what I feel like is going to happen is I just feel like adult day is going to become that next 20-year solution that is really going to provide exactly what these families need, and it's going to give their loved one purpose and meaning. It's going to give them the break that they need so they can go to work or run errands or whatever they got to do, and it's going to keep the cost of all of this care just down so people can afford this, where assisted living is going to rise, home care costs are going to rise, and those services are going to become a solution for upper class, and it's like, what are we going to do for that middle class that's stuck? They don't qualify for Medicaid, and and they don't have an unlimited like budget. They got to think like, how do we spend this money that we do have for mom? Like, how do we do this wisely?
Yeah, that is the feedback I hear quite a bit is we'll always need senior communities. That is not going anywhere. We need them a part of what we're doing. And families have sticker shock. They all of a sudden really look into it, I think, at more of a time of crisis, even though we always try to say, like, plan ahead. You have to plan ahead.
It's like,
but we don't,
none,
right?
None of us do. It's like
None of us do.
Yeah,
We're reactive, but then they are like, oh, my word, they're not prepared. And there's then I think a lot of fear around how are we going to do this? So how just supportive the adult day model is. And I love that you talk about that really is I think you had mentioned this before, like the 20-year revolution is going to be the era of adult day programs. It needs in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
It really does. And so if anything, I want people and my listeners to know, like, there are so many this is such a great option that can support families. And even with COVID, a lot of people are now working from home. They've moved mom and dad in their home, the kids in college, just to be able to even fight against that inflation that we're all experiencing, right? We're all pulled in like so many different directions. And there's a couple other things too with senior living communities that they're fighting against, which is, and you can probably speak to this a little bit more, but the staffing shortages that we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
And lack of qualified people that are able to come in and support that. What are you noticing in that landscape?
I think culture is everything. So I think, staffing shortages partly almost localized down to the culture of the communities or that agency or whatever the service is being provided. So it has a lot to do with culture, but it also has a lot to do with like the geographic areas too. There's certain areas that are probably a little bit easy. If you took a poll across the entire country, I'm sure there's going to be certain communities that have really good culture that just attract the best talent. And they probably have less staffing problems. And you're gonna have other areas that like they're just in a certain part of the country where people they just continue to work, like working hard, and kind of like the labor workforce is always kind of a staple of that community and really kind of geographic specific when it comes to staffing problems, in a sense. But I think as a whole, just generally speaking, we have a lack of available staff to work in this environment, especially with the future demands and needs of it. And then you also we live in a society where like if someone wants to go make $70 real quick, they can go turn on their Uber, turn on their Lyft, turn on this, this thing, go work whatever shifts they want, pick up their money, call it a day, and then go on with their next
Check
thing.
out.
Check out,
Yeah.
exactly, In kind of like the organized care world, like we have structured shifts and like, Mrs. Smith, like she needs care, she needs help with her shower, she needs help with all these different things at certain times of the day. Like, and it's like, there needs to be some sort of structure around that can kind of create stability for these environments. And so like we don't have that like privilege of operating like an Uber or a Lyft, because we need qualified individuals. But then the hard part too is like I'm saying all this stuff and having all these such high expectations for this demographic of folks, but at the same time we need to pay them more.
Yeah.
you know
Oh gosh,
but it's
that's
like
it. Yeah.
but they also make up the largest percentage of the cost of operating facility or a home care agency, and so so what that's going to do is it's going to directly affect the end user, the consumer, who is in need of these care services. And so it's like if people think that it's expensive now, wait till a year from now or 2 years from now, what these costs are going to be for these services like home care or assisted living. Because I believe that a lot of these facilities haven't even like thought about how they're going to make up for this inflation that's happening. Like they're trying to figure it out, but they haven't even gotten to the point where the full realization of inflation, has happened. Because
Right.
they're trying to make budgets into the future based on the past quarter, and that past quarter is changing so fast and so much that it's like hard for them to even figure out what the budget should be next year. Because
Yeah.
you call, like even for us, like insurance costs up 20%, our wages are up 30%, and like that's just all this stuff all in one year. Like we're not used to that kind of like economic change, when it comes
Right.
to
In that
expenses.
short amount of
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then like,
Yeah.
when
To
you
be
go to
able
a
to see
family member
that.
and you're like, oh yeah, like your new rate is X and it's up, 30, 40%. That's a lot to them. 30% on a couple $1,000s is a big number, but 30% on $1 or $2 coffee, like most people won't even think about it.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like that's the hard part about it, is that it's easier to increase the cost of a coffee, but it's much harder to increase the same percentage when it comes to the cost of care.
And when we're working with people, there's so much that goes into that, right? And how people are affected. Are there closures that are happening in long-term care? What's that look
Yeah,
like?
yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, and this is not my stat as much as like I think I was reading something in senior housing news or skilled nursing news, and they actually like I think last year they said they closed 400, or there was 400 skilled nursing facilities that closed in 2021. And so I think that puts a different kind of pressure on I think families making decisions, because for the most part skilled nursing facilities have become like a catch-all for those
Right.
that are on Medicaid or had run out of funds. So it's like what is going to happen to those people that are on Medicaid now if like, if that trend continues, or
Right.
if the government, because what's tough about a skilled nursing facility is it's that particular environment is primarily government funded. But if you have all this inflationary pressure, but then the reimbursement rates of all this stuff is not
Right.
in alignment,
Sustainable. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just, so I mean, you're seeing a lot of that happening. I think you're seeing a lot of consolidation in home care agencies. I think you're seeing a lot of home care agencies that are trying to start, like a new one, or people are trying to start their own, but then like they can't get the staffing. Like I know we faced the last 2 years, like we haven't been able to grow our home care agency because we just can't hire enough people to offset. Like we're always like hiring enough people to meet the current needs, but not to meet the future needs.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And it is a transient position too, in the sense of I worked in that caregiver role professionally when I was in college,
yeah,
right? So I was doing that, but then I got my degree and then I didn't do that anymore and I
right.
moved on to a different. And so I think a lot of that, you're not able to necessarily have that long term person in place because there's those types of factors that come into play also.
Well, and it's weird too, because I remember in 2011, I mean, we put an ad out like on Craigslist for $25, and we had
Yeah.
100 people that called, you know, and these were all like real people, like not like
Yeah.
scammers. Like this is like
All
real
right.
people that would
They
show up
really
at your
wanted to
door,
do it.
and
Mm-hmm.
and but now like that doesn't even exist anymore, and
Mm-hmm.
now we're spending $1,500 a month on LinkedIn or not LinkedIn, but
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. And it's like even
Mm-hmm.
spending that kind of money every single month on Indeed, it only produces a handful of people, and it's just like
Yeah.
so this does cause a big problem, I feel like, into the future. Like if we're all experiencing that level of, we're in a care business, so we're servicing and taking care of people's needs. We're not selling a widget. So I think
Mm-hmm.
if it's that hard to hire,
Mm-hmm.
train and onboard someone and then and then retain that person for a long period of time in this environment today, what's it going to look like when the demand for care increases,
Oh,
and doubles over the next 10, 15 years, but the amount
yeah.
of people willing to work that role or that job has not
Mm-hmm.
increased.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to put
Mm-hmm.
all of the pressure back on the family to get involved in the care. And it'll be
Yeah.
simply because like there just won't be enough people professionally that can take care of people. And I think that's going to add to the whole multi-generational household thing too.
Oh, definitely. 2 points I wanted to bring up is that, and we might have to check my facts, but I believe once those are eliminated from the state, correct, they are not able to then be added back on, right? Like, so once
Right.
they close that ability to then
Well, because
receive that reimbursement. Correct?
well,
Am I right on that?
I think does that have to do with the like, certificate of need type of thing? Like you have to apply for a
Yeah,
certain number of
well,
Medicare.
right, like I think per state you've got that allotment, right? And then once you say, okay, we're not doing that anymore, you can't just then in like a month say, oh, actually we need
It's
that
back.
space
Yeah,
again, right? I think once you
yeah.
and I know there's a term and I can't think of it, but
Off the top of my head, I would love to actually learn a little bit more about that specific topic. But I think like what is interesting about it is I know right now, we've seen a lot of, Medicare. I think this past year, Medicare Advantage plans make up 42% of all Medicare plans.
mm-hmm,
And that has
mm-hmm,
increased from like a number that was in the like 30s or 20s, like just like 5 years ago. And so what that means is like now you have more insurance companies managing these Medicare funds on behalf of people. And
mm-hmm,
every single person that is actually working in the field, like physicians, ARNP, anyone that's like doing orders, social workers, the ability to get someone the services that they need, whether it's oxygen, whether it's durable medical equipment and supplies, whether it's Medicare home health, like the ability to get that person whatever it is that they need is so much harder now. Like if that person's on a Medicare Advantage plan. And so it's like,
right,
my concern is to me, Medicare Advantage plans were designed to meet the needs of someone who is 65 to 75. Here's your silver sneakers. Here's this little benefit. Here's some, free
mm-hmm,
food for the house. Like, here, we'll help you manage your doctor's appointments. But the second you need chronic, ongoing, long-term care,
yeah,
Medicare Advantage plan is the worst thing you could ever have. So it's
mm-hmm,
like I think that's the part that I worry about too is like what is that going to look like for the people as like these Medicare Advantage, like as the Medicare Advantage plan pool shifts and there's more people going to like the chronic care, long-term care, side of the age spectrum, and the number
Yeah.
of people that are coming to a plan that are 65 is like fewer, like what's going to happen to those Medicare Advantage plans? Because we're already seeing how it's hurting the provider and how it's limiting options, and how Mrs. Smith used to be able to go into rehab and actually get real rehab and get better. But now they're rushing her out, and she hasn't even really gotten back to healthy. But now she's going back home. Now she's having a fall again, and you get in that like doom loop. It's just like you
Yeah.
just
And
can't
if
get
you're
it.
not progressing at a certain,
Right. Yeah. They're
pace,
like, all right,
then you're
you got to
not.
go home.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now she goes home,
Yeah.
and she's like, well, maybe Mrs. Smith takes longer to progress. Okay. Because she's just, a little bit more frail, or her
Right.
cognitive function is causing her to not be able to progress at the level that you think she should.
Mm-hmm.
We've had people
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
in our assisted living facility that like the first month they went into rehab made zero progress. But like
Mm-hmm.
by day 90, they were finally able to come back to us. And it was just
Yeah.
because they couldn't bounce back as fast as other people.
Right.
And it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
so it's like, I don't know how we can just, I think it's hard in our space to just, identify everyone and put them on this like progression time, and I know they have different like
Mm-hmm.
ways they qualify it. But it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, even,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the right answer is. I wish I had like a perfect
Yeah.
solution, but I can tell you one
Right.
thing that in my experience I've seen is that the Medicare Advantage plans are definitely not designed to meet the care needs of someone that needs ongoing long-term care.
Question off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Our adult day programs, because I want to talk about all the amazing things that they provide, but since we're on the topic of Medicare, are adult day programs covered by Medicare? Is there some coverage in there?
Adult day is kind of weird because like I came from the traditional private pay, like
Mm-hmm.
assisted living, facility world. And then, we also have a home care agency, which is kind of in the traditional private pay home care world. But when you look at adult daycare nationwide, 80 to 90% of most adult day centers are primarily Medicaid funded.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're primarily Medicaid funded, it's like the success of each program sometimes is almost state dependent, because
Got it.
with Medicaid, and that's a completely different animal than Medicare. But with
Mm-hmm.
Medicaid, there's some states that have strong Medicaid programs that support adult daycare. And if you go look at those states, they'll have like really strong adult daycare programs and strong
Mm-hmm.
adult daycare associations. But then there's a lot of states that like they put no effort into the adult daycare world, and like there's like hardly any money that go to that, and then there's like no adult daycare centers there. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like it's weird because adult daycare has been primarily, and this is the hard part too for families. Like if we're talking on this call and we're like talking about how amazing adult daycare is, they may go to their local adult daycare and be like, I don't know what they're talking about. Like I don't know what Nicole and Chris are talking about, but mine's not
Yeah.
like that. And
That's why people need to open yours,
right, well, and
right?
and ultimately, like our goal is to try to create that standard where it
Mm-hmm.
don't matter what state you go to, you're gonna have
Mm-hmm.
like the exact same experience. Of course, like
Mm-hmm.
the way we run them and how we have to comply with like the rules and the regulations and the law when it comes to that state's licensing, that'll be
Mm-hmm.
different. But our goal would be that to the consumer, you would not know the difference. You would walk into this one, or you walk into
I
that
like
one,
that.
and the experience would
Mm-hmm.
be the exact same. And I think that's where assisted living and home care got their scale. And that's why like across state lines, you can assisted living for the most part is the same concept.
Yeah.
Even if all the
Yeah.
rules and regs are completely different in each state, for the most part, it was private pay that was able to kind of create this standard, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
so I think like, right now, Medicare doesn't cover adult daycare services. There's a, but Medicaid does cover adult daycare services. But the thing is, I think like, it's going to fall in the realm of primarily private pay, like
Mm-hmm.
similar to private pay assisted living, similar to private pay home care. And then I think
Mm-hmm.
all of these services over time will somehow start to be supplemented by Medicare. I think we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing that
Yeah.
happen in certain ways, but I think like it's going to take time before that becomes more mainstream, because like there's some plans right now that include adult daycare in their Medicare plan, but they don't have a
Mm-hmm.
way to bill for those services.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no way for
Mm-hmm.
me to bill that Medicare. They haven't set up the infrastructure, but they like put it as a benefit. Like we've had like 4 people this year actually say, "Hey, our
Yeah.
Medicare plan includes it." Like, "Hey, look, it says right here." We asked our insurance guy, and I'm like, "Well, I
Right.
know like if you could call your insurance guy and put me in contact with the person that we can call, so we can bill for those services for you, and we'd be happy to do it.
Right.
But they haven't built the billing infrastructure out yet. So
Oh, that's
I
frustrating.
know.
Yeah. Because it would, if they had that process in place, it would be so much easier. And I think families, they talk to each other. And one thing I've noticed is that there is that discrepancy, right, state by state. So then when they're trying to share information with each other as a family, which is what we want to do when we're apart, all
Yeah,
in different states, that the information is hard to figure out because it's so varied,
100%.
which makes it complicated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially on the Medicaid side, where I think Medicare will create more stability, because
Mm-hmm.
Medicare, is traditionally more of a, it's more of a federal funded program. So it's like I
Mm-hmm.
think over time, it's like one of those things where we'll see Medicare, um, like Medicare will supplement in a way where they might be like, okay, here you get X number of dollars per year towards this thing, or you get X amount,
Mm-hmm.
per, like if you use assisted living, if you use home care, you use daycare. But I don't know when
Mm-hmm.
that'll be like more formal. But when that happens, I think, then you might see families in the future start using a little bit of their Medicare dollars that are allotted for chronic care, a little bit of Social Security income, a little bit of like whatever savings that they might have, and like a combination of all those things might then help, supplement a lot of this care. But I think it's gonna take
Yeah.
time for that to happen, But
Yeah, it's going to be a wild next, what, 20
I know,
years, 30
I know,
years?
it really is. Like
Hang
I
on.
know, because they like,
Hang on.
because everyone has like, because everyone's biased to their own like industry. Like
Totally.
assisted living's
Yeah.
got their own like kind of biases towards like why they think that industry's gonna blow up, and same with home care,
Mm-hmm.
and same with,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us in the adult day space. Sometimes I feel a little bit of a loner, but it's
Yeah. Well, you're making it. You're creating the space, which I love.
yeah, I'm trying to be at
Uh,
least be a bigger voice, and stand up for and support and kind of educate the consumer on it for sure.
yeah. And I think the misconception too is that you guys are, what's the word? You're actually working together for good, right?
Yeah.
So what your program does only benefits assisted living in that partnership. And I want to get into the benefits because I know, oh my gosh, we could talk for like hours, I'm sure. But what happens when people are engaged in adult day programs? There's like so much good, and I would
Yeah.
love for you to share with us what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think like from a general, like I wish I could give you actual stats off the top of my head, but from a generalistic standpoint, like, the number of people that have started in like our center, and that have cognitively just improved, like
Mm-hmm.
like they're able to then go home and like hold a conversation better. They're remembering things a little bit more. It's like they're almost like kind of like coming into like a more of an awakened state of like
Mm,
alertness, as opposed to kind
yeah.
of being in like this like zombie kind of funk, like, like just like existing. Like now, like someone, going home and talking to their family and having a story to tell, and talking about their day, and laughing and having this like energy that maybe they didn't have. And then
Mm-hmm.
you tie that and mix that up with just like their physical abilities, like their ability to like get in and out of the chair, and walk around the house with their walker, or to get in and out of cars, or whatever, or the shower, whatever that case might be. Like them in our environment where there's this continuous movement, this
Mm-hmm.
continuous activity and engagement with others. It's create, you can tell, you can visibly see right before your eyes them both getting better physically and cognitively, in a way that I
Yeah.
don't see in assisted living and in home care. Because sometimes home care is so specific to the caregiver and the client's
Mm-hmm.
relationship. And then with assisted living, maybe 20% of the residents actually come out of the rooms and participate in in
Mm-hmm.
in all the activities, whereas like the other 80% of folks, for the most part, just kind of sit in their rooms, like, which is not much different than how they would be at home. So it's like,
Right.
in this environment, everyone that is in the building is getting some sort of stimulation.
And that's what's so cool about that environment is that the purpose, the focus is to be engaged in purposeful things, to socialize, to have that community, to have that support. There's something about leaving the house. Like my mental health is so much better when I like get dressed and I've got a plan for the day and I know I'm going to be seeing someone, right? We've got something we're looking forward to. There's so much that happens just in that schedule of the day of having something fun to do.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's like when you think about even like how that makes us feel, I almost feel like the effect on them is like 10 times greater. Like, cause like, it's like we can overcompensate some of that, just because we're younger and have more energy and, we're more alert to some extent. I feel like for us, like when we take those little steps and, we, plan out the day, or you get ready, we go, we have a kind of a plan or an attack for the day to go do these things, get up, go to the gym and, be alert. Like, I feel like it gives us a competitive edge, but I feel like for them, it like changes their life. Cause it's like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like they're going from like nothing to now like like yeah, it's just it's so hard to even it's so weird because you can visibly see it on someone in that environment. You can visibly hear it in their caregivers' voices when they have experienced a month like under our care. Like, it's just
Yeah.
so weird to like see how much of an impact that it has on people's lives. Like, but that's why I'm
Yeah.
like, again, so bullish and so optimistic, I guess, about the future of
Yeah.
this, because I feel like it's like, it does so much good for people. Like, to me, it's a better medicine than any sort of antidepressant or Alzheimer's medication that exists today. Like, just come and be in. I mean, even like one of our ladies has been with us for 3+ years. Like, she had stopped eating before she came to us. She was in her home alone, had no social life anymore. Her 2 sons are taking care of her, and she's like not eating. She's losing a ton of weight. They're worried about her health. And now the daughter takes over, brings her back down to Florida. She finds our place and she brings mom in. Mom's the life of the party. Like, she has been for 3 years straight, the person, our host, anytime a new guest starts, like, she's the one like showing them around,
So
introducing them to
good.
all of her friends. And now she like, she clears her plate every single day at lunch because she's around other people. Like, there was some like study that was like, when you're in that social environment, how it actually increases your nutritional intake, but just being around other people who are eating,
Yeah.
and it's like, like her just being around others, they're all eating, they're talking, they're conversing. Next, she ate her sandwich before she even realized it. And
Yeah, and carving out that time for eating, I think like a day will go by and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten yet, right? But no
right,
one's saying like, we're gonna sit and eat together.
right. Well, yeah,
So
but
that's so
and
helpful.
when I know, like in like home care, sometimes like, what I've noticed, like, you'll prepare this meal, but if you don't sit down and eat with them, like, they might just look at that meal or that sandwich, just like, it looks so intimidating to them that they just like stare at it, they never eat it, and then like all of a sudden they're not getting the nutritional intake they need to like to remain healthy, and then they start failing, getting weak, start falling, losing balance. Where I feel like, in that environment, you're around everyone and like everyone's eating, and it's just you have an uplifting environment, and you like kind of reverse that effect too. So there's just like so
Yeah.
many powerful things, from nutrition to engagement and socialization to like just their physical abilities, like that are being improved. And what I still am just like, man, all these benefits, and it's half the cost of home care and assisted living.
Yeah. It's so great. It's so needed. There's so much to it. There's such a conversation around brain health right now and maintaining our cognition and all of that. And the stats are just weighted towards that. If we're not isolated, if we're interacting with others, if we're doing things that are new, if we have that sense of purpose. And I just think that Adult Day does that so well for
Yeah.
people and just increases that ability to live like a really, really full life. And it's not only on your guest side, but the family side
Yeah.
too, right? You've got
Yep.
families that are really overwhelmed, and I don't know, you know a lot more than I do about that. It's just like how it helps support those families.
Yeah, and just like, their ability to, take care of their kids or go to work still, or just get a break from, that nonstop pressure of taking care of a loved one, and it's like, I think when you're taking care of someone, the the constant pressure of always having someone depend on you. It's one of those things where it's like, maybe 24/7, and you got that constant pressure, that constant like, depending, they depend on me, like, for everything, for, sitting with them, honey, where are you? And because you left the room. It's like, and then, it's just, so to be able to like give them this period of time where they can go do whatever it is that they need to do to like decompress, just relax for a moment, take a deep breath, and kind of just reset, recharge. So now when they go back to being the caregiver, they're doing it from a restful state instead of from like this like restless, like sleepless, like frustrated state. Because I know, like, even in the assisted living facility, when when we were living there, and I was kind of like the overnight person still, It's like if had worked in, like, was the caregiver all weekend long, and then overnight, and then like, Monday's rolling around, I'm praying to
You're
God
done.
that like my
Yeah.
team shows up in the morning and is there, and I can at least take a
Yeah.
breather starting on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, my
Mm-hmm.
breather was like my ability to like, all right, if my team shows up on Monday, then I can go out and market and kind of connect that way, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
decompress that way, because like the strain of like constantly being like on it, like and on it's like cognitive of your words and how you're talking to them, and
Mm-hmm.
when someone's repeated the same thing to you like 1,000 times for 3 years, it's easy like for me to go take care of Mrs. Smith a handful of times here and there, but like every single day over and over
Mm-hmm.
for years on end. Now it's like I can see how families lose their temper, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so like they
Mm-hmm.
need that time to decompress and take a break and kind of just,
Oh yeah.
reset, so that like when they come back to have to, how do we overcome this, thing, they can actually handle it without losing it.
This is really self-care for caregivers to be
Yeah.
able to have their loved one be cared for and in a safe environment, and they're able to, take care of themselves,
And
which is such a
well,
benefit.
and what I love about it too is that like, and I wrote an article here, like, it was like, guilt-free care. It was like something about like
Mm,
guilt-free care. Like this is
mm-hmm.
like, you don't even feel guilty if your loved one absolutely loves going to this place and they have like the best time of their life. So they're safe and they love it there
Mm-hmm.
and it's good for them. Now you as the caregiver are not feeling guilty taking a break, because
Yeah,
it's also good for them. It's not just good for you, you know?
right.
And that and
Yeah,
that
that's a good
and
distinction.
and that's something that I feel like a lot of times, families struggle with when it comes to assisted living, because they made that promise,
Mm-hmm.
we'll never put you in a home, mom. And then now for
Mm-hmm.
3 years they've mulled over that promise and mulled over that promise. And I told my mom, and they're just trying to hold on to that promise, but they realize that like, when they made that promise, they didn't know what they were getting themselves into.
Mm-hmm.
And so then like this kind of, and I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong. Like the guilt is more of just like, it's like they've brought this guilt on themselves. Like they're
Right.
just emotionally trying to like comprehend, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like I can't do this, but I promised mom I would do this. So that's what I love about this, because like, man, if bringing mom to a place where like, man, when I come pick her up, she won't even like get in the car. She doesn't want
Yeah.
to leave. Like now as a caregiver,
They
I
just
feel
want
like
to
I feel
stay.
so. Now when if I were to drop her off there from the time they open to the time they leave, I don't feel bad, because she loves it that
Mm-hmm.
much. If she loves it that much, like now as a caregiver, I get to go sit on the beach guilt free, not a care in the world. I can read my book. I don't have to worry, peace of mind, just having fun, enjoying life. So I think that's powerful too.
It is, yeah. And what a privilege that you get to witness all of those incredible interactions with
It's
the
cool.
residents and the family members, which I'm sure like ignites your everyday, right? Like we need that to keep moving forward when you see how positive it can be. Are there parameters? So would you say this is like the client that we serve? So for families that are thinking about, would this be a good fit for mom or dad?
We kind of like serve three different types of people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the only people we really can't help, unfortunately, are those that have a cognitive behavioral issue that
Mm-hmm.
might cause them to lash out in some sort of anger or rage. I
Mm-hmm.
think that level of like kind of memory care need is hard for us in our environment. But
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, like I feel like we're able and capable of handling most people. So we have like three different kind of like groups, and we kind of group everyone into. So we have our highly cognizant folks that, I mean, to some degree, they might just have a walker or a cane, or, I don't know, or they might just need some, they're just, yearning for that socialization, But then we have kind of like our middle group, which is like Mrs. Smith, who's like, it's like every day is like 51st dates. Like I forgot what I had for lunch. I forgot,
Mm-hmm.
what I did for, yesterday, or, like they're very forgetful. They tell the same story all the time, but they're super social. And so like blend in really well with everyone in that environment. For the most
Mm-hmm.
part, unless you're like your family or our staff, like we know, but to other people there, they can socialize and hold their own, and you wouldn't even really know it sometimes. And then you have like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the third group, which is like late stage Alzheimer's, and for the most part, like they can't really communicate. They may not be able to verbalize exactly what they need, or they might say things that don't make sense, and their words just kind of all jumbled. And like we still take care of those people. We just have a dedicated person dedicated to that group, and the way we do activities together, and the types of
Mm-hmm.
activities that we do, and the way that we like help them with like eating and mealtime, it's just a different focus area, but we still take care of those individuals at that stage too. because a lot of times
Yeah.
people will start with us and they might be that highly cognizant folks. And then they become a little more forgetful. And then eventually sometimes after 3 or 4 years, they might be at that stage where they're not able to formulate those sentences like they used to. And they're having a harder time, and we might have to help them out with eating, but we're able to really kind of take care of that whole spectrum pretty well.
That's awesome. And you provide a lot in that environment too, right? With some therapy, is that correct? Where you can, if needed, bring in that like OTPT, or do you do hair services, or what else kind of comes along with that?
Yeah, so in our current environment, we have we do hair and nails, and then we also encourage families to let their, if they use a Medicare home health company and they wanted to continue using that Medicare home health company for therapy services, they could do that in our environment. We have like a dedicated place that they can go and have that. We have meals every day. We have continental breakfast. Lunch is served every day. We have snacks in the afternoon, and then just unlimited activities, and then transportation to and from home. In our new building that we're building, we'll also have in-house like kind of a gym setup that's specifically dedicated to physical and occupational therapy. And then we'll be contracting with like a third-party service that will provide those therapies for them. But our ultimate goal, like I think down the road long term, is to like become a post-acute alternative to skilled nursing rehab or Medicare home health, where families could come to us, they could get the breakthrough, they come to us, or we pick their loved one up, they go to work for the day, their loved ones in our environment, but they're able to have fun, build relationships, and then we're also able to, take care of their, PT, their OT. And then at some point, like even maybe kind of that be the destination where we handle all the, the doctor's visits and, like whatever they would need as a
All
whole
of it,
person,
yeah.
we could do it in that environment, and we kind of become like the hub, and then like, treat everyone's ancillary needs in the hub. I really foresee that kind of being like stage 2 of our growth. Stage 1 for the next 10 years is like private pay, social model, break for the family caregiver. Stage 2 is like, okay, how do we wrap the medical needs around these, individuals, in our care, so.
Yeah, I love that, looking at the whole person.
Yeah.
And what they need and being able to provide that. I was looking through and I saw you guys had some really cool core values, and I want you to share that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And walk us through that.
Sure, absolutely. I'm glad you found those. Yeah, so we spent a lot of time like trying to figure out like narrowing down like at every level, not just the leadership level, but like what do we stand for, and so we were able to actually kind of use our acronym of ACTIVE, so part of the ActivAge, and so for us, like the idea of being attentive, so whether it's attentive to our colleagues, attentive to our members, attentive to our members' families. For us, the ability to see and meet the needs of anyone that we're serving and being super attentive to those needs, very important. So like tell our team, it's like when we're walking up to the place, being attentive to the environment. Is there trash on the ground? Is it well maintained, well kept? When we walk into the place, being attentive to the people in the room. Our members, like, does someone need something? Do they need a water? Did they grab their walker the wrong way? Did they, is someone about to have an interaction that might cause them to be upset? Being attentive to our words and how we verbalize something. Being, the family members calls and they're upset about something. Like, are we being attentive to following up with that individual in a timely manner? So just really being attentive in all aspects, really, and that's part of the A.
I think we all need that reminder every day.
I know.
Like, how can we be attentive people,
Right.
right?
And it could be simple things like me and a colleague getting caught up in a conversation, and like a family member walks in, right? And like we're trying to finish our conversation. I don't know if you've ever been in an environment where like you're standing there and they're still talking, and you're like, okay, well, I need some help here. How do we break that mold? Right. So like the second someone walks in, like we're cognitive. Okay, hey, we'll hold this conversation. I'll get back to you. Hey, Mrs. Smith, how are you? Like, what can I help you with today? So,
Amazing,
yeah, and I think that's important. And then number 2 is compassion, which obviously like that's in this world is pretty common. But what was more important is that I always tell our team is that compassion always comes first. So if I said something, or we have a rule in place, or there's like, this is what the systems say to follow. But if one of those rules or those things that we put in place or the processes would cause us not to be compassionate in that moment, then the process is potentially broken, or in that moment, this is where you make the exception, because compassion always comes first over the rule. So it's like
incredible.
So like I think that was an important one, because sometimes like, Kris, like, did I do the right thing? And I'm like, look, the right thing is compassion comes first. If you handle that situation and you were extremely compassionate to whatever happened, and like in the way you handled it, that's how we need to solve that problem. And then we'll look back, like, did we follow the process, or like did the process need to be changed because it was potentially causing us to not be compassionate or not show compassion.
Wow. Yeah.
So, like, I think that helped the girls kind of like, because I think like for me, like understanding business, like I get both sides of it. There's like the processes, like financial side of it, but then there's like the compassionate people side of it. So it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want them to ever feel like, to me, like you can never go wrong if compassion is like how you made the decision, but you could go wrong if you made it based on typical business practices.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and then it's like we need a constant reminder that like we got to build trust with each other. And that comes to like, in order to build trust so we can work together as a team to execute this mission that we're on of like helping people live their best life. And if like we could just stay in alignment and focused on that. And then, innovation or being innovative, like, so, constantly, like we want people to be encouraged to bring us new ideas and to like always think of ways that we could improve a process or improve a system or just even improve ourselves. So that comes through like the form of just constantly trying to, how do we innovate from where we're currently at. And then, V, I guess, was the value added. So it's like always trying to like find ways to add value, which is, basically doing more than what is expected, from our members, our colleagues, our families. So if they expected X, like how do we like up the ante where we've added value in a way that like they weren't even expecting that to happen. And, and we're constantly seeking that out, so I know like when people have when they come in for our guest pass, we get them a little gift basket and it has some of our little trinkets in it. But then the one thing we do that's kind of unique to them is we take a photo that day of them and like one of our team members or them and a new friend they met, and we take a photo and we put it into a nice picture frame, and then put that inside the gift basket. So it's some little personal to the family member, so like, and then when they leave that day, like they're leaving with this little gift, and that would be like one example of something that like they weren't expecting that. And if we can, and then now it's personalized a little bit where it has a photo of their loved one in it, so.
It's a great thing to do. I bet that's so meaningful for people,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
When we interact with new things, we're like, oh my gosh, they really care. That feels so good.
And then it's personal because like, it's like it's hard to, like in the assisted living, I love what we used to do there because we do welcome baskets, but the welcome basket was always something that they liked. Like, so, we had one guy that like loved giraffes. Like we got him like a giraffe lamp and a giraffe like picture frame and a giraffe stuffed animals. And then we had like another guy that like loved Harley Davidson. So we got him like Harley Davidson shirts, like Harley Davidson, like, so like when he came in that day, like he got all this, like this welcome basket with like all this Harley Davidson stuff, and like, and it wasn't just the, like, cause I think, a lot of times in assisted living, so there might be a welcome basket, but it's like it's all the branded stuff. Like it's all their stuff,
Not personal.
Yeah.
That's such a good reminder for people to be personal. Yeah.
So
I think too, there's that adjustment. I always tell when we had families that their loved one would move in, those first couple times can be a little harder, right?
Yeah.
And their loved one's like, I'm not happy and I don't know anyone, but it just takes a few weeks and then they're so immersed in the culture and enjoying it. And I think those personal touches make that transition like even easier. But I always like to tell families, like, you just got to give it a little bit of time,
I know.
just to see the progress.
I would tell like family, like, look, it's, especially in assisted living, it's like at least 30 days for them to just stop asking to go home. And then it's going to take 60 to 90 days for them to start to like really like it. So it's like by day 90, like they should really like it. And if they don't, then we're doing something wrong, but But typically, like, at least by day 90, we could always almost say for 100%, like everyone's gonna love it by then. But there's like there's a few stages to expect.
Yeah.
With the adult day,
Yeah.
it's interesting because it's their loved one. What I've noticed, and this is what we're trying to figure out how to overcome, their loved one is their own worst enemy, meaning like they're already coming up with reasons why their loved one, the family caregiver is already coming up with reasons why their loved one's not gonna like it. And so they start like being like, wow, my dad doesn't like, he's not social, or my mom is like, she won't like to do that, and it's like we haven't even tried it yet, it's and so what's so interesting
Give it a
is
chance. Yeah.
is once someone actually comes in for a guest pass, where now we've typically gone through the initial point of contact, we've gone maybe a tour, and now we have like the person in need of care coming in for their first day, like unattended, like where their loved ones like leaving them, like the family members like leaving for the day, and like they're coming for the first day with us. Like 90% of those people absolutely love it. Like can't wait to come back and almost don't want to leave when their loved one picks them up. It's like if we can just make it to that stage is what proves to families that like your mom or dad or your spouse, they're gonna have a great time. They're really gonna enjoy it. They might do things that will blow your mind. You never thought your mom or dad would ever want to do, but they will do it in this environment.
So true.
And it's like, so a lot of times it's educating the family member to like giving them tools of like ways to help like overcome whatever fears that the person they're caring for is having. And then like some tools and stuff like that to help them themselves like realize that like if we get their loved one to guest pass day, 90, there's gonna be a 9 out of 10 chance that they're gonna absolutely love it. And then you'll have this perfect solution that you'll be able to use from here on out, so.
Yeah. I always think too that we show up differently for different people and like how we interact. And so, and there's family dynamics at play also. So I think too, just knowing that the loved one in a different environment could really blossom and do things differently. I don't know if I shared this with you before, but your name was like written on my calendar for probably like a year. And I just was like every month would pass. I'm like, okay, I gotta reach out. And it just was meant to happen at this time. Yeah. So feel like you're just a leader in this space and bringing such brightness to it. And I'm excited about the future. I want you to share with us what your vision is. I know you are like going for the stars, which is so great. We need people that can do that. Tell us, what are you hopeful for? What's coming next?
Yeah, so when I first started on this path, I felt like when I came across Adult Day, I was like, all right, the world needs more of this. We got to standardize this. We got to create a like really something that's kind of national, where like there's a national standard across the entire U.S. for Adult Day services. And something is consistent where families could walk into one in Florida and walk into one in North Dakota and they would have the same experience. And so that led us down the franchising path, which my initial goal was always like, I want to open up 100. Like it was like, let's get to 100, because I felt like with 100 locations, it would help us make pretty strong impact in the adult day space. Like it would allow us to have probably, I think when I did the math, it was like, over the years, with 100 locations, we could probably accommodate or meet the needs of close to about 1 million people over the course of our time. And I was like, you know what? Like when I say our time, like over the next 10, to 20 years. And but then as the idea of Adult Day grew, and then honestly, I think through the pandemic, just because I felt like that created perfect storm even more, just because the cost of living and inflation and labor shortages and just all this stuff, like it became like a massive problem like overnight. Instead of like this thing that was like becoming a problem, it was like now it's a real big problem. Like
literally overnight.
Yeah, it was like everything just went like everything just got broken and like doubled in cost. Like it seemed like over like a year and a half period. So it's like now I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I think the need for this is going to be even greater. And then I'm also, as I'm going through this process myself, just realizing that like the amount of time it takes, to find a location, go through the construction process, and then get open, you're looking at 18 months. It's just a process because you gotta get licensed. It's just, you gotta get funding, license, the location, construction, all this stuff. And so I'm thinking, man, if we're gonna really make a big impact and truly like, because people are getting older, obviously pretty fast. In 20 years, we're going to be seeing pretty staggering rates of, people getting older and increasing in age. And, we need to be there for that demand, not be trying to grow in that. Like in 20 years, we need to have like, whatever our goal was, we need to have like achieved that and like going on to the next one, And so I think what I did is like, in order to create more pressure and to create a broader vision, we actually decided that, okay, our ultimate goal is to have 500 locations across the US, and then to also start, expanding internationally. But if we can put that timeline out there, is like, that is our goal, basically by 2035, then, and our goal is to have 100 by 2030, then like it creates a sense of urgency, and, it kind of creates this vision for people to understand what they're jumping on to be a part of. As we think about like expanding the franchise network, and as we think about being able to communicate with our team exactly where we're going, and then what kind of an impact that'll have. And then, us doing that over that period of time would allow us to like really change the lives of around 10 million seniors. That's kind of like our vision, is to change the lives of 10 million people, help them find a sense of purpose and meaning, happiness and joy in life. This like second stage of life, they may have thought they lost that, they may have thought it was over, but now we can help them enjoy life till, until their last days on this earth, And so, if we could help people experience that, where every single day they woke up, they were excited about the day and they look forward to the day, and like that's how they live their last days, that nothing, bring me greater joy than that.
It's an incredible mission. And for people that are thinking like, maybe I do want to open the franchise like this, where do they go? Where can they learn more?
Yeah, so
they feel called to do that.
Absolutely. So we're ActivAge, but without the E. So ACTIV age, care.com. So activagecare.com/franchise. And then there's a bunch of information on there. We also have a website called adcpro.com, which is like a non-branded website that's really just for people that want to learn more about adult daycare, as far as like the business standpoint, and we provide education on sales and marketing tips and business tips and finding funding, and like how to create projections and how to scale, and just all this stuff that like is just purely educational. Because at the end of the day, like whether someone, some people are just going to join the franchise because they want to and they believe in what we're doing, they want to be a part of it. And there's people out there that want to do their own thing, and I just want adult daycare to grow, and I just want the level of professionalism and the attention to detail that we bring to it. I just want to be able to help people that are going to be a mom and pop shop become more professional, so that we're raising the standard of what to expect when it comes to adult day services.
Yes, I'm like nodding my head. People can't see me.
Because I think a lot of times,
yes, what you said.
And I think the problem is like we all get into this business. A lot of people get into this business because they have a heart for taking care of people. So they have big hearts and they have big ambitions, but they don't have any business knowledge. And it's like, in order to be successful and to deliver care at a level to meet the needs of the future customer and those expectations, like we have to become better at business, which is not just making money, but it's how do we service the needs of the customer? How do we process issues? How do we build a team? How do we lead? How do we become strong leaders? Like that's like business is all of those things. It's like really more of a sport. And so it's not just about making money. Like, but if you don't make money, then you can't fulfill your mission. So it's like you have to like understand that part of it too. If you could take someone that has a huge heart, is caring, kind, they want to make a difference, they want to make an impact, but then we can turn them into professionals, in that, then I think, we'll all be more successful, and then we'll be able to actually deliver like the level of care that we have always anticipated or, wanted to intentionally. I think sometimes people have the biggest intentions, and then they start this business, and then the way that they intend to take care of people doesn't happen because of like their lack of business skill sets, and then it becomes this like cycle of where they're frustrated, they're getting burned out, they're not fulfilling this purpose like they had always thought they were. But it's like, so if we can help support them on some of the business side, sales and marketing, operations, leadership, profitability, all that kind of stuff.
You can just go on and on. I'll just sit here. It's like your master class.
Sorry.
I love it.
Sorry,
No,
I'm
I'm
excited.
like, and I mean that in the best way. Like, on that note, you're going to set us all up for success, not only to be elevating the space of older adult care, but in business, leadership, just better humans in general. So I'm just so appreciative of who you are and what you're doing and your mission. And I just thank you so much for this conversation today. I appreciate it.
No, thank you, Nicole. I love what you're doing too. So it's like, I appreciate, even the level of professionalism. I think I told you before, just, the way, how you branded everything, the way, that you think, and you're thoughtful about the guests you choose, just, everything about what you're doing is, super professional, and it comes from like, a genuine, authentic place. And, it's like, and I think storytelling and having platforms like this in this kind of like small world of, senior care is so important, because it's one of the biggest, population sizes about to face all of these things. And like, and I would say from a social media standpoint, or from like an outlet standpoint, it probably is one of the few industries that have like the least presence on social media. So
Yeah, I think so. Well,
so thank you, girl. Appreciate you.
let's do it. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.